It's more of a getting curious. Because what most people will do is they'll go and do it, and then they'll be like, no, like, oh, I'm so awful. I did that again. Now I have to punish myself. Now I can't eat all the good stuff or the stuff I enjoy, or I have to go to the gym and run on the treadmill or whatever. It's a punishment scenario. It's not a, oh, something inside me is trying to cope, trying to adapt, trying to feel good. What is it? So one question I really love, and always taking a pause when we go to do that, because when we're in the energy of it is when it's really ready to be worked with. So just taking a pause and saying, what am I trying to avoid by doing this? Or what am I trying to feel?
I wasn't trying to waste 21 minutes of your time. But yeah, so yeah, no, you brought up a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because you said this continuous growth and improvement. There's a theory, and I don't know what the theory is called, but there's a theory that says, like, we sort of chose this life on Earth before we got here. Like, whatever our I guess prior form of being or supreme being or whatever it was before this, like, we knew the life we were going to live before we got here. And I wish I knew the name of that theory, but it's like, I don't know that I necessarily believe it, but it's like, it's crazy, because if like, I think of all the things, all the challenges that you go through in your life, all the bad parts and all that. But like, if you knew that all these things were going to happen to you before you got here, and you chose that to, I guess, maybe evolve as a spiritual being, like, that's a crazy concept.
Yeah.
I mean,
stepping in on this, I'm just like, yeah, let's dive in. So I feel like I've heard something close to that. And then on the other side too, there's all these alternate timelines, if you want to look at it that way too. So I've really started playing with this lately and feeling when there's like an openness to a shift in a timeline. Because whatever, and this is what I play with my clients, with myself too. It's the only thing that's separating you from a different life is the energetic, the frequency that you're currently living at. Right? So how do we change our life? We change our energy, our frequency, and our belief system so we can make different choices. So that's at kind of the basis of it. But it's like, well, how do we do that? And there's so many different ways in it, and it's simple when you know those practices and those theories, but it's what's stopping us from making those shifts, from making those jumps.
Man. Okay. So before we get into that, I ask everybody, like, I give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves. And if I don't do it now, I'm going to forget, and it's not going to be good. So if you just want to take a couple minutes to introduce yourself, say who you are, and then, yeah, we'll dive in.
Yeah. My name's Alyssa Van Alstyne. I'm a personal professional transformation coach. First and foremost, though, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I am a gardener and a lover of nature and sunshine. And my extremely profound journey in life has led me through different traumatic healing events, relationships, all of that. And what I have committed my life to now, and what my higher purpose is to help people find their own ways to expand and support and live the life that they want to. Because as I was saying before, there's you can live the life of your dreams, but it's just what's getting in your way and what's stopping you. And usually that's different programming on the unconscious, subconscious level, as well as mindset work that's stopping us from living what we want, whether it's through fear or shame or guilt. What's keeping you from living the life you want? And let's remove that. Let's work with that compassionately so it transforms, and then the world is yours.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. So okay, so you just touched on something that I really talk about. I say this all the time, but I think all of us, or not all of us, all of us to some degree, I think we have beliefs that we have sort of carrying around like about ourselves that are not even our beliefs. They were given to us or instilled in us through an education system or a family, siblings, parents, whatever. And so you have to really think about the power of that statement, man, because if you have things that you believe about yourself that are not something that you actually formed by yourself, that means that something outside of you, an external force, is guiding your life on what's possible, what you deserve, what you're worthy of. And that is like, that is the physical manifestation of like perpetuating a cycle in a family. So like, you hear of like generational poverty or like generational cycles, traumatic cycles in families. And I don't know any other than like physical force, which I think is like a very small like percentage. I think those beliefs that are instilled in you are one of the ways that happens. Like it perpetuates that cycle because it's like, and I told somebody this one time. I was like, why do we think things that other people made us believe about ourselves, but then like we don't, it's like what we believe. Let me see where I want to go with this. What we believe about who we are should be rooted in our personal experience about what we've done or what we have not done or what we have accomplished or whatever. But it's like before we even get to that point, we're limited on even trying that thing because of something that is outside of us, like some belief that is outside of us. And a lot of times that comes from this person or these people. They have damage that they haven't healed. And so it's like that's literally like a cycle.
Yeah, exactly. I love where we're going with this, and it's so simple, but at the same time, you actually have to become aware of it, right? And where we live our lives right now, we live our lives from 5% consciousness, 95% unconscious or subconscious.
Hmm.
So only 5% of what we do during the day is actually knowing why we're doing what we're doing. So this is where it gets fun, because then when we go into the unconscious and we start playing with it, and there's different ways to bring up all of this. But I'm reminded of a story, and it just shows the power of this. And there was this little girl who asked her mom. She said, "Mom, why do we cut the top piece off of the ham before we put it in the oven?" She says, "I don't know. It's just the way we've always done it."
Hmm.
We said, "Well, call Grandma. What's she gonna say?" We call up Grandma. Yes, "Why do we cut off the top part of the ham before we put it in the oven?" I said, "I don't know. That's just what we've always done." So great grandma's still around. Let's call her. Why do we do this? So they call great grandma. I say, "Why do we cut off the top part of the ham before we put it in the oven?" And she says, "Oh, sweetie, the ovens were a lot smaller back then. That's the only way I could fit it in." So what are we doing
Yep.
without knowing why we're doing it, because it's something we've always done? So I love talking with my clients about money. Money is so beautiful. It kind of encapsulates our belief system, whether we live in abundance or whether we live in scarcity. So when we talk about money, we can also replace it with time, with connection, with anything else. But one of the main beliefs is that making money is hard. So if I have that belief system, if that's something that I'm living my life out of, then when something comes along and it's easy, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to
Hmm.
jump at it. I'm going to continue to live out this belief system that money is hard.
Or you'll sabotage yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Because that belief system is usually baked in really deep to what you witnessed in your parents growing up. And when we talk about unconscious, subconscious programming, our belief system was pretty much formed by the time that we were 7 years old. So, what are we looking at? These beautiful, innocent, childlike minds that created this belief system, whether or not it was the truth or the reality of the time. But as children, what did we see and what did we witness and what did we make it mean? And we all have that. But now it's up to us as we get older and we see how we're living out our life and we see, why am I doing that? Why do I stay in these awful relationships, right? Coming down to attachment theory and how we gained connection or trust or love and how we thought what we were worth. And that's really the basis of what what we look at in humans is that basic layer of self-worth. Am I worthy? And from there stems confidence and trust in self. But it's really asking those questions. Why do I think I'm not worthy? Right? Am I worthy of making $1 million a year? And then just listen. If you feel resistance come up, and I do a lot of work in the body because the body's the unconscious, or even where do I feel tension or contraction in my body as I say that? And then let's uncover that and let's look into that so we can reprogramming it. So we reprogram on the unconscious, so in the body, so doing somatic work, different types of things to access that and rewire the energetic blueprint. And then we come back up to the mind. So our mind is on board. So we can logically think it through so we're not living from just a program belief system, a program that wasn't even ours to start with.
Yeah. Man, that's so powerful. And I mean, you said it, this not even ours to begin with. Like the program is not even ours.
Yeah.
I love the story about the baking the ham because that really puts into perspective. Like, I think that was kind of like a very real example of what I was talking about with the generational cycles. Like, but I mean, I don't know, man. I just can't. It really bothers me that we think things, and you mentioned self-worth. It's like, do you think that you're not worthy of success or love or whatever? Or are you just, is that an echo of something that you heard from somebody? Because it's a really, like, for a person to say they are not worthy of something, I think that's a very deep thing for a person to think, if that is in fact what they think about themselves. But I think I think that is a small portion. I think mostly it is that a person has been made to believe that they're not worthy for some reason. And so again, I can't break away from this idea that this has been an external influence for a lot of us. And I mean, I don't know. I guess if you hear that, enough from enough people around you, you do begin to adopt it. And so it is something that's internal. And so that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were talking about a person who you mentioned finance. A person was grew up in like a poor household. He grew up in sort of poverty, and now he is a financial planner, which he's been for like 30 years. And so, like, I think the beauty of all this is, it sounds really depressing when we say, oh, these thoughts have been instilled in you, and like, you're in this environment and it's like kind of working against you. But you can also use that for as a greater good for your purpose on earth. I think, I don't know, I think it's like sometimes we have to go through things and we have to experience these things. And I don't think it's our fault if we're in this space, but I do think it's our responsibility to pull ourselves out of that. And sometimes, man, that can be incredibly powerful motivation and inspiration that you otherwise would have never had to achieve these things. I was talking to somebody else too, and I was like, and this person was a pastor, and I said, man, I don't know if this is disrespectful to say or to think, but it's like, if God allows something to happen to us and we don't use that to then become either better for ourselves or to help other people, I feel like that's almost, or whether it's a talent or ability or something like that, I feel like it's almost like that's disrespectful. And a person might not believe in God, and that's okay, but it's like, the alternative is to have these things, have this experience, and then not do anything with it. What's the point? Like you're just going to hurt for no reason. I don't know.
Well,
But
you've
I'm sorry.
touched on so many things there. No, there's so many things that you just said. So yes to life being a teacher, right? We think we need to go to a classroom in order to learn something, but in reality, life is the teacher.
Yep.
And the beautiful thing about it is it's going to bring you the same situation over and over again in different forms until you've taken that as an opportunity to grow.
Yep.
So looking at, and I love to bring, just from my past experience and people that I've worked with, and what I see is relationships, right? Why do I keep attracting the same person? Why do I keep getting in the same relationship, even though it's a different person? Why do I keep going back to it? because, well, you haven't taken the opportunity to grow past it. So what does that look like? Right? And it's not always easy, right? Usually it takes support. It takes actually being really honest with yourself and really exploring. And I have a history of really big health issues, and I was sick for a long time. And then I got major surgeries. I started getting better, but then I started getting worse again. And the one question that I asked myself was, what do I benefit from staying sick? And this is the case in a lot of chronic illnesses as well, because our bodies, they have immense potential. They're healing machines. That's what they're capable of doing, given the right circumstances, environment. And there was something in my being that I had to ask myself, why do I want to stay sick? And I had to get really honest with myself that, yeah, I'm scared to have responsibility again. I'm scared to go out with my kids because I've never gone out with them alone. What if something happens?
And you think it was that was keeping you sick?
It was.
Hmm.
It was because I had more safety, and what our bodies are doing, what our unconscious especially is doing, and our ego, it's searching for ways to keep us safe. So it was safer in my belief system at the time to stay sick than to get better.
Hmm.
So what do? I start working with that. I start creating safety in my body. I start really questioning my beliefs. And then from there, you get better. So I had major spinal surgeries. I was close to paralyzed. I had extreme pain for about 7 years after a spinal surgery. And then I started getting, after a spinal surgery, then I had to get more to repair and get rid of. I had major infection in my body. There was lots going on. And after that, I got pregnant with my third, and then I went through all this amazing deep dive into sourcing safety for myself, really figuring out my body, learning how to trust myself. And I think that's the biggest thing we can all learn to do, is to trust ourselves, trust our gut, trust our intuition, trust our own knowing, and then going from there. But from there, I developed an autoimmune condition. And when I went to doctors, first of all, it took 9 months to diagnose, even though I knew there was something there, because you have to start speaking up for yourself. Mm-hmm. That's another big thing. When you learn to trust yourself, you speak up for yourself. So finally getting it diagnosed and being told that I would have to be on medication for the rest of my life, or have my thyroid zapped because I had hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease. And then I'd be on medication forever anyway to manage whatever it managed. So I told them, no, I don't agree with that. I sought the help of a naturopathic doctor. I was off my medication within 3 months, and I've had optimal levels since, through variations of energetic healing, through variations of really emotional regulation, really lifting the energy that was causing those symptoms to happen. So there are powerful ways to allow your body to get into a state, but it's all questioning the belief system. And I think, especially in the medical system, I kind of turn to there, but one of the things that is such a heavy belief in North America, in our allopathic medical system, it's a sick care system, and it's the belief is that the doctor knows better than me. I couldn't be farther from the truth, because you know what's happening in your body. And if you don't, then we've repressed at such an intense level because we've been told that pain is bad. Another belief, pain is bad. It's not. It's a message from you, or for you, from your body. To do what? What's the message in pain? To slow down, to pay attention, to take a break, to check on what you're putting in your body. There's always a message.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because most of these doctors are doctors of medicine, and there's ortho doctors and stuff that are like specific parts of the body. But you're right. I don't know that I've ever met a doctor that specializes in like what the messages from the body, like what the body is telling you, what this could possibly be. Because you have symptoms for certain things, and I guess you can go down that route, but it's like listening to what your body says. And you're not the first person that sort of told me that they had some sort of condition, and whatever the treatment was from the what would it be, I guess the mainstream medical system or whatever you want to call it, it just simply was not working. And then when they tried other things, that's when they finally found relief from these conditions. You mentioned the beliefs, and I think that's incredibly important because, like, I think when people have a belief about something, they just kind of believe the thing. But I think you mentioned, like, did you say testing your beliefs? Is that how you worded it?
Testing it, questioning them.
Questioning it, yeah.
Going into inquiry, right? Can I know without a shadow of a doubt that this is true?
Yeah. Well, so, like, but my thing is, how do you believe a thing if you've never questioned it? If it's just something like if you just believe it, but you've never really tested it or questioned it, is that really a belief? I mean, that's just kind of like, going with the flow, like the ham situation. If you never really tested it, why do you cut this piece off? Then that's just like something that you do.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people, they're not comfortable exploring those beliefs or questioning those. I don't know. I think maybe sometimes we don't want to know the answer. If we have a belief that we've just kind of been comfortable with for our entire life, and we don't want to question it, maybe subconsciously we're concerned that if we do question it and it ends up not being the case, then that's sort of a shift, right? A big shift it could be.
And that's actually a really powerful question that I use in my practice. What do you know that you don't want to know? Because you know.
Yeah.
Right? You may not want to, right? You may think, well, once I start believing in myself and trusting myself, I'm going to change my relationships. And if I change my relationships, I'm not going to have family or connection anymore. And then I'll be alone. Right? So what do we know that we don't want to know? What's keeping us safe? Or how are we trying to keep ourselves safe from an unknown situation? Right? Because once we start changing things, and this is where the ego has a beautiful field trip, right? If we haven't forgiven something, if we haven't dealt with something from the past, we're going to project it onto the future, usually in fear. So this is too when you're working with entrepreneurs, when you're working with anybody going out and starting something new or creating, especially if they've had a failure in the past, whether in a similar venture or in something else, they're going to project it onto the future. So failure gets a really bad rap, but once you really tune into the knowledge and the wisdom that it holds, and that failure is a part of any type of growth, then it's not so charged anymore. But what I also know too, and from my experience, is it's not the story, or it's not the thing that happened that hurts. It's the attachment and my expectations and the story that I attach to it. So what am I making it mean? That's creating suffering in my life.
Yeah. That's a really powerful point, man, is the meaning we give to it. I bring up this book a lot. Have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl? Yeah. So I think we can all agree that the Holocaust was probably a pretty terrible thing, and it would probably be a very, very difficult thing to live through that. And he did live through that. And he mentioned, for anybody who doesn't know, he mentioned that one of the ways that he did that was to give a meaning to it. Now that's kind of hitting on like I guess the failure aspect that you were talking about, like giving a meaning to this thing, but also too, on the other hand, like what you said, you can change the meaning of a story, of a thing, of an experience. You can change the story. It doesn't have to be, something that's disempowering. It can be incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something about awareness earlier. I think just the awareness of this. I don't think a lot of people, like conversations like this, a lot of people have not really heard many, if any, in their life that are in this space.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something, you were talking right there, and it made me, I had a question, and I forgot what it was because I was trying to pay attention to you. It'll come back.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up that most people don't have access to this type of thing. And also too, when we look at, I've been diving deep into Eckhart Tolle's work lately, and he talks a lot about ego versus essence versus how we're living out our life. And our ego, lots of people talk about, yes, I need to rise above my ego, or I need to stuff it down like it's some bad thing. But it's just here to keep our human body, it's here to keep us safe. And the way that it does that is in duality. So you're right, I'm wrong, right? This is good, this is bad. But if we question out of that and we take ourselves out of that aspect, then we see that there's so much available to us. And when we can also take ourselves out of that, because I believe in a well integrated ego. So seeing it for what it is, what it does, how it serves us, but not necessarily listening to it with too much weight if we can question it. So when people think about identity and this is who I am, when there's a question brought up that kind of questions that identity, that's when the ego takes it to kind of get more scared. And it's like, well, no, I'm not. And then we put up the walls and it's like, no, no, you cannot tear me apart. Right? This is who I am, right? I'm the athlete, I'm the businessman, I'm whatever it happens to be. So when it's questioned, that can be a big event for a lot of people, which is why the protectors come out and kind of the walls get put back up. So I actually, in my experience, I had, like I said, lots of health stuff. And I went from a point in graduating high school, all of that. I was top athlete. I was top academically. I was a volunteer everywhere. I was everywhere. And I had a slip and fall accident. It would have been about 4 or 5 years out of high school. And this is where everything kind of started for my health journey. And it was simple. It was I slipped and fell at work. I got a concussion. My spine got a little twisted. But what stemmed from that was I had lots of memory issues. I couldn't remember things. My jobs that I had, like I was in university at the time too, like I couldn't rely on my memory. My grades started plummeting. I had to back out of all this extracurricular, all the sports that I was in. I felt like I lost everything. But then at that time, I actually got the privilege to question what it all was for and what it actually meant about me. And am I not still valuable, even though I can't perform, or I can't accomplish, or I can't do this or that? Am I still valuable? And that was, at the time, of course, it didn't seem like a gift. It was more like a life sucks. Like, why is all of this being taken away from me? I could have gone that route. And I did for a while of really being the victim to what life had done to me versus, and this is where it shifts, how is life working for me? If this was a gift from the universe, if this was a beautiful lesson or something leading on to something else, what would it be teaching me? What would it be giving to me? And then you look at it from a different way. And as you reflect back, because reflecting back is really powerful as well, is I got the chance to really learn who I was without having to perform. I use the Enneagram to support in my work. And it's kind of a personality system. And I am a 3, which is an achiever. So that's like, yes, I'm going to be the athlete. I'm going to be a top performer at work. When after I got my original spinal surgery, I shifted into a sales position. I got top 10 in North America within my first 5 months within the company. But then my health started failing again because the surgery was a little bit faulty. So how do we play with this so that we're understanding? And at the time, I didn't have an understanding of how I seek connection, how I seek love, how I seek recognition. And for me, it was in showcasing that I was great or I could do this. And that's how I was acknowledged, because that ties back again to when we were young. When did you see love and affection and connection from your primary caregivers? And I was always in sports and celebrated academically and all of those things. So it ties into so many areas of our life for how, and it always comes back to connection and love and safety for why we do what we do. So becoming aware of that. So yes, I'm still gonna want to strive my best, and I love learning, I love growth. But now I'm not doing it out of a way as to I need to do this so I feel in a certain way. It's instead I'm whole and complete and I can still do what I love. So the come from is different, the inner experience, which is all the difference.
Man, there's so many things I want to touch on from what you just said. I appreciate you sharing that. But so I think, man, a really important question to ask, because you were talking about identity and you were talking about also Eckhart Tolle, which is like, man, if you ever read his books, you will literally question everything that you think about life,
Yeah.
about existence and everything. But I think an important question to ask is, you mentioned being an achiever, or a person, whatever their thing is. But I think a question would be, do you do the things? Do you do whatever those things are because that's the person that you are, or do you do it because that is what maybe makes you feel fulfilled, or you think you're going to get? I think in your case, it maybe sounded like there was some external validation going on. I mean, I think all these things are important questions. But to go back to Eckhart Tolle and identity for a second, because we talk a lot about identity on the podcast, but I think a bigger way to ask that is like, so people will say, I am, XYZ, an entrepreneur or whatever. But I think that's the ego. That's an answer from the ego, because when you look past the ego, like, you realize that there is nothing that has to come after I am. Like, you just are. Like, you don't have to. There is no other. That's the sentence. That is it. I am. Like, you just are. And man, what was that? What was the book? The Power of Now, I think it is, Eckhart Tolle. When I read that book for the first time, I don't know if you've read it or not, but he talks about kind of like stepping back from yourself and basically observing yourself as a I guess maybe a third party, or a being or whatever. That was a really I had sat there and for like 10 minutes and had to digest what I just read.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think we need to be, because I was talking about this actually just yesterday with somebody. We need to be careful with what comes after I am, because I don't think we just speak. I don't think we just say things. I think what we say is powerful. But I also don't think there's necessarily anything that has to come after I am.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting too, because in one of his books too, he talked about nature and how it evolved and how it's beautiful. And if we diminish the beauty and how expansive it is when we give it a label. So when we go and we look at a flower and say, oh, that's a beautiful flower, versus not labeling it, because then we kind of look at it, we move on. But our language is so limited in what we can express with it. So if you don't label it and you just look at it and you just witness it in its form and how it moves or anything about it, how much bigger and more beautiful it is. How much more expansive it is. Same with a person, right? Just what you were saying. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a coach. That's so limiting once you start seeing it that way, because there's so much more to a person. There's so much more to what they can give or be or do, or even just in being. When we talk about like the feminine and the masculine energies, when we get into the feminine and how it's more of the be energy and the man being the do, or the masculine being the doing energy, and how you play with those, and how in our society today, and I'm going to touch on something else because that brought something else up, but in our society today, it's more of a do energy. And we can't just live in the BBB energy either. I forget who said it, but it's more of like a be do.
Yeah.
So it's more of like a play on that, but finding that. And there's no balance because there's different seasons, there's different situations, atmospheres, there's different ways and that you want to move forward, but acknowledging those two energies. And you said something before, and this is kind of played out through the session so far, but we touched on worth, and you were talking about how if someone believes that, or where they get their belief system from. And then I forget, you said something a little while ago, but if you look at the way our society runs, looking at marketing especially, they're selling you a feeling. They're selling you something that you need to feel complete, that you need to feel worthy of, whether it's attention or connection or love, right? You need this. And if we look at any industry, the basis of marketing and advertising is what feeling are you selling someone? Because it's more attached to the feeling. So that's the biggest lie in history, because you already own that. You already have that. And that's what I call outsourcing, is finding something to give you that feeling, being really reliant on your external environment versus insourcing. So insourcing is you already have it. So even when if we look at a really beautiful example is when we look at a relationship where it's, well, I feel so expansive, I feel so in love. And the story that we attach is I need that person to feel that way versus it's already in you. You just need to access it and find a way to stay in access with it. It's not someone else that gives you a feeling, you already have it. So, how do we switch the narrative on that so we can be more in tune with our emotions and our feelings to really have mastery over that so we're not seeking something else in order to feel fulfilled? Mm-hmm. So, it kind of comes around about in what we've been talking about. And I love, there's so many ways that I could go into that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, because I didn't want to forget this because you talking about marketing and I think Apple is really good at this. Apple is really good at showing you the lifestyle you're going to have with their product. But I think the problem with that is that when they sell this feeling and we think that we're going to have this by buying this thing, I think we become dependent on this sort of consumption. You know what I mean of whatever the thing is, whether it's a phone or whatever. And so if that's the case, then we're always going to be looking to, the car or the house or the thing, the phone or whatever. And we just become, I don't want to say enslaved, but if we're all sort of craving that internally and we think that buying these things or achieving these things is going to get us that. I mean, I don't know if you work with people. I've heard this from a lot of coaches. I don't know if you work with people who are like going through the midlife crisis situation. But man, you'd be like, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but the average person would be surprised. It's so common to see a person who, from all the external view, has everything, has the house, the success, the finance, all that stuff. But it's like inside, they don't have that connection with themselves. And I guess I don't know, maybe it's because they've tried to achieve these things in place of answering that question for themselves or validating themselves or whatever it is. But it's like my thing is, how does a person get to that level of success without first having that connection with themselves? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But anyway, it's just I wanted to say that before I forgot, because if we become dependent on sort of searching for that feeling in other things, first of all, we become dependent and we're always going to need to buy the next thing. But then the question is, like, what happens if we lose it? What happens if it goes away? Do we lose our sense of self, our sense of grounding with ourselves? That's just like terrifying.
Yeah. And that's what happens.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then we go out and find the next best thing. Right? You see it in relationships, in business, in buying stuff, right? That's why we live in a world that's so heavily reliant on entertainment, on alcohol, on drugs, even pharmaceuticals. It's a way to escape. Really, even going on the vacation, right? Are you escaping your life to go and pretend it's different for a while, or are you just going to live somewhere else and enjoy life in a different area? There's different ways that people do vacations even. So I love that you touched on the midlife crisis, and this is happening earlier and earlier from a community, from a society aspect. And I think it's more too that people are waking up to the fact that I'm chasing something that's not giving me what I want, because now I have to chase the next thing. So it's the same thing as what you were saying. Once you're chasing a feeling, right? Once I get this, I'll feel this. That's fleeting.
Yep.
Right? Because we haven't learned how to insource that. We haven't learned how to tap into that on our own. So I want to use this as an example, because I know you're into fitness as well, and talking about that, and when let's use in general, like weight loss, because so many people have that overeating or that nightly binge or whatever it is, right? Those snacks that they love. And to first of all say that the way food is engineered now is to mess with your mind if it's a processed food. And also on the other hand, like fitness and health is a billion dollar industry, but it's super simple. Yep. Right? Move an activity in whatever way, shape, or form you want to do it, and eat in a way that you're not excessive. So why is it such a big industry? Why do we keep going on that? And I've had a client too that I'll give her example because it's really powerful. She was doing all the right things. She had super big motivation for wanting to lose the weight, wanting to get in shape, right? She had kids. She wanted to bounce back. She wanted to really be able to live life in a way that she could be active with them and she could feel good about herself at the same time. But she kept going and doing the emotional eating.
Hmm.
Right. So when people are doing this type of thing, it's more of a pause situation. It's more of a getting curious. Because what most people will do is they'll go and do it and then they'll be like, no, like, oh, I'm so awful. I did that again. Now I have to punish myself. Now I can't eat all the good stuff or the stuff I enjoy, or I have to go to the gym and run on the treadmill or whatever. It's a punishment scenario. It's not a, oh, something inside me is trying to cope, trying to adapt, trying to feel good. What is it? So, one question I really love, and always taking a pause when we go to do that, because when we're in the energy of it is when it's really ready to be worked with. So, just taking a pause and saying, what am I trying to avoid by doing this? Or what am I trying to feel? And then asking yourself, is it not already here? And that's actually, I'll give my personal example. I used to, I didn't like medication. I didn't like it. I didn't have good experiences with it, with my pain and everything that I had. But what I did turn to was alcohol. So I drank a lot. I told my doctors about it. They said, no, we all drink. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful. Um,
Right.
I don't want to. So what really helped me, and I had kids, and of course I didn't drink during pregnancy or breastfeeding, but then it was like, oh, I still want it. And then my practice before that, knowing what I do now, my practice was, what do I want to feel by going to have a drink? What do I want to feel? And then I just tuned in and I'm like, it's already here. Like I can be wild and goofy and enjoy life. Like it's already here. And it was so interesting because for the first while before I started that practice, it was more of a really like on the subconscious level, it's more of like, and I want it, but you don't want it. Like it's a lot of push and pull, a lot of energy wasted on trying to do something, trying not to do something. And that just takes energy out of all areas of your other life where you want to expand and live. So now when I think about like, it used to be very controlling. Like, no, don't drink, like drive past. Like it was very, I had to be very mindful not to go in that direction. And now when I look at it, it's like it's funny because it's like sometimes I get really angry or something, and I'm just like, oh, I just want to drink right now. And it's like there's no charge. It's just like, no, I don't. Like there's like nothing to it, and it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I'm not searching for a feeling because I know I already have it.
Yeah, well, see, I think this is why it's so important to have that relationship with yourself, to have that conversation even with yourself. Because you mentioned earlier the fitness example. If the person overeats or eats something unhealthy or whatever, they beat themselves up, and that's clearly, that's just simply not healthy to do that. I tell people, speaking of the fitness space, if they have a thing, whether that's sweets or chocolate or whatever it is, if they know that is sort of I don't want to say a sort of a problem for them, if they overeat or whatever it is, that can be an incredibly powerful motivator in the fitness space. So just say, for example, you give yourself 1 day a week or 2 days a week, whatever it is, to have that sweet thing. That can be a powerful motivator for that person, but you can only have that conversation and that relationship with yourself if you trust yourself and if you can put that value in yourself. Now, I guess things like alcohol are a little bit different because there's probably I'm not really in that space, so I can't comment on that. But I would say alcohol would be. I wouldn't just recommend to a person to just indulge in alcohol as a reward. I mean, maybe they can, maybe they can't. I guess people are kind of different. But I know in the fitness space, that sort of cheat day, that meal that's maybe the sweets or whatever it is. Like I said, that can be a really powerful motivator. But then that leads us to the conversation of, okay, well, if a person is, because it's like a very like trusting yourself, your own intuition, your own inner guidance is a huge thing. And I don't think a lot of us, we have an issue doing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's probably tons of reasons for that, but I think one of the reasons is I think a lot of us lack the clarity and the vision for what that even is, like where we even want our future to go. But also too, we're not confidence is so overused and is so cliche. This is not confidence. This is like you lack the belief that you can follow your intuition, whatever that would be. And I don't think I do think confidence is keeping promises and trusting yourself. But in this scenario, I think it's something other than confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said there was really powerful when you talk about trusting yourself and knowing what you want. Like, what do I want?
Hmm.
Like, I don't think I was ever taught to ask that. What is success to me? Because I know what I'm told to believe success is, right? Working a lot, retiring when I'm older, traveling when I can, having all the stuff. That's what I'm told success is. But what is success to me? What does it look like? And lots of people, they don't slow down enough to do that. And also, sometimes it can be really hard for someone to identify what they want due to whatever's happened in the past, right? Whatever those stories, whatever those limitations are, right? Whether it's I don't deserve what I want, that's a big one. Or if I get what I want, something bad will happen. That's another big one. Just what are the stories around it? Or if I do this, then I won't be loved, right? If I don't make money, and like I said, our society is so charged with money beliefs that lots of it is like, well, my worth equals my bank account, or my worth equals my assets. Versus my worth is completely separate. As a human being, I'm inherently worthy, no matter what my skills are or what I own. And that's the same too when we look at and I'll go into just the coaching space for a while or consulting space or whatever. When people are building their own businesses, lots of what happens is when a business fails or when it feels icky or sticky, it's because we're putting our own worth into what we're selling. It's not separate. So when we separate our worth from, like I said, our skills, our gifts, our job, then it's a different game because then you can't take that away. But if it's attached to something else, and that's why too, when you see people retire even or lose their job, it's a huge hit to some people because that was who they were. That was why they were worthy. So it hits them on a different level.
Yeah. And that's like, man, that's really depressing. I mean, I consider myself an ambitious person and a hardworking person, but I don't like the idea of attaching my worth to that thing.
Yeah.
But so let me ask you about money because you mentioned finance a couple times. What do you think if you could like narrow it down to one thing? And I know that's really kind of hard. What do you think it is that really sort of keeps people from having the level of finance that they want, whether that's a certain number in the bank account or whatever? What do you think is like a very common sort of issue or sort of obstacle in the way of that?
Well, two things: their energetic blueprint and their belief system. So when I talk about money, and there's a beautiful exercise that I like to do, it's to really explore your belief system around money, and it's take what you want to make next year. Let's say it's $100,000. Okay, that's the goal for next year. That would be amazing.
Right.
Now double it. So $200,000. And then start listening to all the stories that come up, right? I'll have to work hard. It'll take too long. I'll have to put in a lot of hours. I don't know if I can do it. I probably don't deserve it, right? We're limiting ourselves before we even start, right? So then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, whether it's I don't deserve it or it is going to take a lot of hours, right? If that's our mentality going in, then we're going to prove it true. So how do we break away from those and start questioning those? And that was a big one for me. I had lots of money beliefs that I've been working through, and my belief now, which has been kind of exchanged from all that, and this has been like quite a process, is that money is easy. But say that to someone and then hear what they say back. Say, making money is easy, right? I attract it. It just comes to me.
Well, one thing that I've really noticed with a lot of people, man, is kind of being in the business space and the professional world is, dude, like, so, like, yeah. So I'm sure the mindset, the beliefs are there prior to the money, but so
Yeah.
like after the conversation with money, like how they spend money, where they put their money or whatever, it's like, I understand everybody has a budget and that's 100% important. I understand that, but it's like they limit literally their entire life based on their finance. Like they're not wanting to spend or like wanting to, and I don't mean like not taking vacations or whatever. I mean like some people, unfortunately, their entire philosophy, their entire mentality is based on what a thing costs, like what is, how much money is this? And it's like, I don't really know how I feel about that, because yes, you need a budget, and yes, there's obviously only so much to go around, but also too, like people, whoever the people are printing money every single day. Like there's money literally everywhere. Now that doesn't mean you have $1 million in your bank account, but it's like, I can't see, I guess what I'm trying to say is I can't really seeing the world through a financial lens.
Yeah.
Because the specific examples I'm talking about is, like I said, it's not budgeting. It's more like, oh, well, when I say this influences their life, it's, oh, like, well, these people make this amount of money, I can't be in that crowd, or these people don't make this amount of money, so they're not in my crowd, or these people have this car, so that means this thing. And it's like that literally sort of, it's almost like it directs the direction of their life based on something that's really just as transient as money.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't like.
it's just a man-made product. And it's funny when you talk about money like that, because it probably reflects other areas of their life, right? There's not enough time. I can't do everything that I want, right? It probably extends to, well, not probably, it does extend to all areas of life because they're living in a state of scarcity.
Well, yeah, I think that is the case, but I think also too, it's like, what would be a good way to put this? Like their friends or their opportunities or their environment in their life is filtered by a financial, I guess, range or level. Like I think a friend group is a really good way to put this, and it can be empowering or disempowering. People can, unfortunately, all of us are judged based on income levels a lot, and people can say, oh, well, these people, basically make too much money for me. I could never, be in their crowd, and vice versa. And then, like I said, with the car situation, the house situation. But I think what the whole purpose of saying that, man, is like it directs the direction of their life,
Yeah.
which limits them. Because I don't know about yourself, I've been in many rooms with business people or whatever, and it was like clearly their income was way, way, way higher than mine. You know what I mean? But it's like being in those rooms, I would have never had opportunities that I had. I would have never met people. I would have never learned things from people. And so it's like, what if I would have had that belief before going in there? Like, oh, well, these people are successful business owners and they're in this space or whatever, or this person has this car or this house. Like, I don't belong in this room with them. What if I would have had that, or explored that, or believed that to be true, and never learned these things or been in those spaces? That's kind of the point I'm making.
I love what I'm hearing at the underlying of that too is that some people are better or worse based on their finances or what they have. So another
Yep.
belief system,
Yep.
right? Versus we're all just people who do different things, who have different things. Money, like I said, money is really funny. One of the exercises I do with some of my clients is just replacing the word money with rocks.
Mm.
So I have this many rocks in my bank account, or I want to give you this many rocks for that. Because what's really interesting is money is just an invention of our day and age.
Mm-hmm.
They never used to have money, right? If we think about life back then, they never used to have money. And they would be fully capable of living life in a spacious way. If they needed something, they would either figure it out or grow it, or go trade with someone, or ask someone for help, right? Or go to nature. Nature provides everything. So when we look at the construct of money, or like I said, the how much weight it pulls in our society, it's something that can be questioned as well. Because when you look at, and I've been diving into crypto and banking and all this stuff lately. And when you look at banks, they don't have money either.
Yeah.
They don't.
I think it's like 93% or something like that of the world's currency is digital.
Yeah. So, but when you when you look at a bank, and I saw just a great example of this, of a guy who's like, I wanted to get 500 grand in cash out of my bank because I was going to do this thing for my YouTube channel or whatever. And they said, we'll get back to you. And I think it was two or 3 weeks later, they gave him like something like 50 grand in cash. And it's like, the banks don't have money either. Mm-hmm. And the way that banks work is they want you to give them your money to save, to keep in a safe place. Because then what they do is, once money is sitting somewhere, it's not an asset, it's a liability. So they actually turn around and lend your money out to someone else, and they make a bigger return. That's why when you look at really wealthy, really successful people, they don't put their money in banks. They use it to work for them, whether it's in stocks or real estate or investing back in themselves, because that's a big return. Mm-hmm. They're not just giving their money to someone else so they can use their money to make more money.
Yeah.
Like it's really funny because I talked to some people too, and it's about, well, my money's in the bank, it's safe. This is what my bank advisor told me to do. And it's, well, yes, it's a business. Of course, they want you to keep your money in there. It's a business. They are making more money off of your money than you are. And that's just the way it works. And that's what we've been taught. So it's questioning these things, right? And like you say, you can go down so many rabbit holes about just questioning. So it's kind of funny because in my mind right now, the point that I've gotten to is, yes, we use money to do things in our world, but money is pretty imaginary. Like, it's a bit of an imaginary thing, especially when you look at now, like I said, I'm in Canada. So when you look at the differences in the dollar between the US dollar and the Canadian dollar, like it used to be on par, and that was a long time ago, but now it's, I think it's like dollar US is $1.50 Canadian, somewhere around there. And it's like, it's not constant. There's nothing constant about it. It's kind of just this imaginary thing that is valuable or not valuable or whatnot. So playing in the crypto realm and kind of starting to learn about that way of making money or adding value, and it's just another rock.
Yeah.
It's just another, how many rocks do I have? So it's interesting.
I really like that you bring that up, man, because both crypto and the sort of I forget how you worded it, but basically money is fictional. But it's like, okay, so crypto is like a lot of people don't want to really invest in crypto because it's like, oh well, there's no basis for it. Like you're basically just taking the word that it's worth this much or whatever. Yeah. But it's like the dollar is the same thing, man. Like you're just trusting the government that the government says it's worth this much and it's just going to stay worth that much. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think when it was, I think at one point when it was backed by gold and silver, when there was something actual tangible that could be, of that value, I think that was the better way to do it. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know, the value of the dollar, because it comes from a government agency and it says it's worth this much. And then you have crypto that's basically, I don't know if it's the market or the person who found, started or whatever, but it's like, I see it as the same thing. I see it as literally the same thing. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy that we put that much faith and belief into something like that. And I think you're right. I think when people sort of store their money in the bank and they think that it's there if they ever need it. I mean, digitally maybe, but I think there would be a very big problem if everybody went to the bank simultaneously and tried to pull all their money out. It would be chaos everywhere.
It couldn't happen. It's not in physical existence, right?
Yeah.
It's not there. It's really interesting and kind of like a bit of a mind F when you start thinking about it that way. And it's like, well, what am I, especially now that we have cards, we have tap, we have like the phone paying for things. And it's like, well, what is it actually?
Yeah.
And when we look at money too, instead of terms as like it's money, instead it's a currency, it's an energy exchange. And where are we energy flows, right? So if we look at it as an energy exchange, energy goes out, it comes in.
Yeah.
So a lot of my work, and I'll come back to my work and a lot of work with clients, is money going out isn't necessarily a problem, but we have to look on where it's constricted on the flow, right? So when you're looking at someone who's penny pinching, who's almost using it as a punishment, that's where there's a lot of stories, right? So that we're going to go back into childhood. We're going to go into upbringing on what money means to you, right? What are the stories that it means? Where does it have that somatic hold in your body that's preventing you from letting the energy flow? And then a lot of people too have lots of problem in receiving money, right? If we talk about too in like if we look at receiving compliments, right? Lots of people say, oh no, like no, like just reject it completely, right? So where am I rejecting the flow of money in my life? Right? So there's different ways to look at it. I love looking at it energetically because then it also tunes down the belief system around it.
Well, but I think that's a really good way to look at it, though, because money is essentially stored time and energy. You know, it's like we work and we do whatever we're doing, and we store the time and energy to make that money, and we store that up to use that at a later time.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about all this electronic, all the digital stuff. So I don't think the gold and silver backed dollar, I think that's more valuable than the dollar we have now. But I think money that's spent digitally is not as valuable as the dollar we have now because there's like banking fees. Like if you spend every dollar that you spend, when it goes to the person it's supposed to go to, they never get a dollar, or if they do, you're paying more than a dollar to cover the fees. So it's like, it's crazy. This like never, it's like almost watered down, digital. If we use it digitally, it's like never the value of what it was to begin with. And depending on how many people it goes through, I mean, it could be like 25% less.
Yeah. It's that's part interesting, the way that it works and the way that businesses are really learning how to, I don't want to say take, but earn, keep, whatever you want to say. Our money goes less, but then wouldn't the belief just be, well, then I'll just make more?
Well,
So
that seems to
where's the question there, right? It's not these people are taking all my money. It's more of continuing with that flow, right? Money flows in, it flows out.
Yeah.
So if there's more flowing out, then I need to open myself to more flowing in. And what do I need to do, or who do I need to become to be able to invite that in? Because that's I think how the world is kind of moving online now. It's opened up so much space for increasing income, for networking, for all of those things. So how do I learn a new skill to be able to open myself up to that?
Yeah. I think that's a really powerful question. I think the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think he asked that, not that it's, well, I can't afford this, so how can I afford this?
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy way, healthy is the word to use. Maybe that's a healthy way to look at it.
Yeah.
Versus, because if you say I can't afford, like, I think if you say I can't afford this or I can't do this, then it's like that's a limiting
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you
So
say how can I, then that's expansive, right? Then you're taking your power, because it's not just something outside of you is what you're kind of like forfeiting to. It's no, I'm going to make it work. And I think too, I want to offer this shift for whoever's watching, is really allowing yourself to see what money does in your life and for you. Because when we like to, lots of people take the stance of, oh, well, they're taking my money, or I have to pay for all of this, or it's just like going out. Well, there's lots of things that you're getting for it, right? Unless you just consistently throw your money out the window, then yeah, it's gone.
Right.
But what you're doing is you're like, well, yeah, I have to pay my rent or my property tax, and it's like, yeah, I get to live in this house. That's amazing. Oh my goodness, I have to pay an electricity bill. Okay, I have AC and conditioning, and everything in my house works because I pay for that. Right? So completing the flow, right? It's not just one way. It's not just going out. It's what's coming back. Same with when you give to, like, if you are just giving money, whether it's to charities or whether you're investing in some, well, let's stick with charities. It's what is the feeling that's coming back to me? right?
Mm.
Why am I doing this? Why am I putting my money in certain places? So still asking those questions, right? Why am I doing this? And it's the same too when you're looking at what you're putting your money into. It's why am I shopping, right? Why am I spending here? Why am I spending here? And this gets back more into, we can look at purchases that aren't necessarily, but what are you getting from it,
Right.
right? What is the feeling that you're chasing?
Mm.
So there's so many ways to look into that. There's so many ways to dive in, but I love, like, in my work, when I look at strategy, that's about 20% of my work. So if we're looking at finances, I'm probably not going to do budgeting. I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to look at why they're doing what they're doing and what their money beliefs are and what they learned in childhood, right? What did I witness in my household for how money is spent or talked about, or what is the belief system around it?
Yep.
And then we're going to go from there, because then it usually just balances out.
Mm-hmm.
Because then people can actually be like, oh, I don't need to spend money here. Or,
Yeah.
oh, as a child, I thought I needed this because that's what I saw was important. But I don't. It's not important to me. So I don't need to spend my money there.
You know, I think when you ask the question, why do you do anything? I think that's a very powerful question. I think when you ask why, you get responsive and not reactive. Because I think there's the emotional need or the sense of that you need this fulfillment for this thing or whatever, and we get reactive to that, like you mentioned earlier, like, you know, you have that, the feeling comes up, and like we mentioned with the marketing and stuff. I think being responsive to that and being reactive are two different things. I think reactive is negative, but I think responding to that and just kind of like you said earlier, exploring that and asking yourself, well, okay, well, why do I need this? Well, it's because of this. Okay, well, why is that? And then it just opens up a whole different thing for you to explore. But I didn't even realize the time, man. I'm not going to keep you here all day, but it's I think because I think we actually talked like 20 minutes. It seemed like before we started rolling. So
Yeah.
I've had you here quite a while.
Mhm.
Do you have a social media or a website or anything you want to share?
Yeah, my website is I'll give you my social media first. My social media is, I'm not on too much. I'm going to start really starting to serve and add value on Instagram, and that's at Van Alstyne Alyssa. And
Okay.
then my website, and it's just a little landing page for what I offer when I'm booking out, just a little blurb about me. It's alyssavanalstyne.cohere.live/about. And I'm sure we'll put that in the notes below, because that's a bit of a
Yep.
long one. But
Yeah, for
I
sure.
wanted to, before we go, I just want to give a little clarity around what you just said and those stages of awareness. That's, in my experience, from what I've witnessed too, is at first it's just like that, completely oblivious, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
ignorance is bliss. Like, I don't have any problems. This is just the way it is. This is just the way that I am.
Yep.
And then when we start looking under the hood, when we start looking into things, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so many problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much going on. I do this and I do that. I have this, like, it's overwhelming. And that's usually where people tap out and they go back into stage one. Just like, no, ignorance is bliss is better. This is just the way that I am. It's too hard to change.
Mm-hmm.
But what's really beautiful is if we stick with it, there becomes that space between this is what's happening and there's a space where you get to take a moment to respond, and then there's you, right? So we actually get to look at the situation and figure it out versus it being so close to who we are. And then we do things differently. So I just wanted to plug that in there because you were touching on it. I just wanted to give a little bit more of an outline for how we can use it in our favor.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that, man. So I want to ask you something. I ask everybody this before we close, and I'm really curious to hear your answer on this. If you could share one of the most important lessons you ever learned, it can be from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, or your career, your business. What do you think is one of the most important, most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
So I had prepared for this because I saw it was one of your questions. And I
Mm.
totally forgot what I prepared, but it's going to revolve around still trusting yourself.
Mm.
And at the basis of that, though, is when we learn to trust ourselves, what we step into is taking ownership of our lives and taking personal responsibility for what
Yep.
we do. Because once we do that, then we're not a victim to life anymore. then things don't happen to us. They happen for us if that's the stance that we choose to take.
Right.
So I think the most powerful thing is taking responsibility for my life and for the outcomes. Because I came upon this really honest, beautiful saying was that everybody is responsible for their own life, but only the healthy will admit it. Only the rich will admit it.
I like that.
Right?
I like that.
So really owning it, because you can't change something if you're letting someone else take responsibility for it. You can't change. It's impossible. But once you say, this is what I did, or this is how I live, then it's like, well, I can choose differently.
Yeah, I love that, man. And what I would add to that, the reason I like that is because I think power follows blame. Like if you blame a thing because your life is not where you want it to be or something's wrong or whatever, you are putting the power in the hands of that person or in that thing to change your life. And then, like you said, you become a victim. And I think that's, man, if there was one thing that I think is like I don't think there's many things that's as toxic to ourselves and to other people, frankly, as the victim mentality, like seeing ourselves as a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but also to have compassion with that part of ourselves. Right? It served a purpose in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So to have compassion with it, yeah.
I think if we feel like wronged by the world or by other people, I think that can be a really powerful motivator. But I mean, I think it becomes the victim mentality when we stay in that space and we say, okay, well, I can't get out of here because, the world did this to me and this is just how it is. And that's just like, man, that's very toxic.
Yeah, there's I'll just put this one plug in because it's super powerful in this space, and it's the work of Byron Katie. So Katie says there's 3 types of business. There's my business, there's your business, and there's God's business. So if I'm anywhere other than my business, I'm in the wrong place.
Right.
And I need to come back because suffering only happens in the mind. So if I'm suffering, what am I telling myself? So
that's really
beautiful process to come back to yourself, but that was really powerful.
That is powerful. Yeah. Alyssa, I appreciate it, man. I'm going to let you get out of here. It's been a great conversation. Very, very, I think you have this, I don't know how to describe it. You have this energy about you and I can feel that you are like really passionate about this. And so I appreciate you sharing this insight and diving in with me. If you can hang out for just a second, I'm going to stop the video and explain to you the upload and all that good stuff. But I do appreciate the conversation with you today.
Yeah, such an honor.
Hey everybody, listen, I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, man. If you like the content, if you found this episode useful, you can visit us on social media. That's YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Music, Rumble, Instagram, Facebook, and Google and Apple Podcasts. There you can like our videos, follow, subscribe, and share. And again, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.